that makes 2 already. Well, technically 4, I believe, but a couple of them were just so small that no one really cares about them. And we still have, what is it, like a week to go until the trade deadline? And this trade, of course, is the biggest that has happened so far. And on top of that, something rather interesting came out about my Pistons. So before we get into the games from last night, we have some stuff to talk about. So the Toronto Raptors and the Orlando Magic completed a trade that sent Serge Ibaka to Toronto and Terrence Ross and a first-round draft pick to Orlando. So just like the Nurkic-Plumlee trade from a couple of days ago, we're going to take a look at what this trade means for both sides. Let's start with Toronto. In the starting lineup so far, of course, they have Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Jonas Valanciunas, and Jabari Carroll. But then at the 4, they've tried Siakam and Poto, who are both too young and too raw for what they're trying to do, which of course is win a championship. Then they brought in Jared Sullinger this offseason, who they thought could be a serviceable starter, but he just hasn't worked out. And Patrick Patterson, who is nice, but he is better served off the bench. And now you got Serge Ibaka, and I'm just gonna say it. Unless the Raptors pulled some type of voodoo witchcraft trade to land a superstar big man like DeMarcus Cousins, Ibaka is probably the best fit. A 3-and-D power forward. It's honestly a match made in heaven. Rim protection is something that the Raptors desperately needed. Jonas Valanciunas is a great rebounder and a great offensive player as a big man, but he has never been known as a protector of the paint, which is something that Ibaka specializes in. This season so far, Serge is averaging 1.6 blocks per game, to go along with 15 points and 7 rebounds while shooting basically 39% from 3. Really, anyone with half of a brain cell can see that this makes the Raptors so much better. However, they did have to give up Terrence Ross and a draft pick, but let's be honest here, that draft pick really doesn't matter considering it'll most likely fall somewhere in the mid-20s, and this is a team trying to win, not to build further. However, Terrence Ross is a guy that Raptors fans love. He had been a great 6-man for them this year, you know, exciting to watch, great 3-point shooter. The fans really just loved him, and they could miss his production off the bench. However, someone that is really going to benefit the most from this trade is Norman Powell. This is a guy that, because of Ross and DeRozan, often got the butt end of the stick when it comes to minutes. You know, there's no doubt that he was talented, but there just weren't enough minutes to go around. During the stretch when DeRozan was out with a sprained ankle though, he was doing a really good job at filling in, and of course he wasn't giving you everything DeRozan did, but you know, he was still dropping like 16 here, 20 there, you know, just really good production. Norman Powell is a young guy who any other team could most likely turn into a legitimate starting 2-guard. He is that good. So you lose Ross in the 10 points per game he was giving off the bench, but that opens the door more for Powell. I mean, it would have been nice to be able to keep both, but with what Serge brings and what Powell can do given more minutes, it certainly justifies trading away your 6-man. Overall, I'm saying this trade was extremely solid for the Raptors. I don't doubt the fit at all or if he'll make them better, because I'm sure he will. Now it just comes down to whether or not they can keep him this offseason, considering that he will be a free agent. I'd imagine that that shouldn't be too hard to do though. Now for Orlando, of course they got Terrence Ross and a draft pick that will fall somewhere in the mid-20s for Ibaka, who like I said was an expiring contract. Now off the rip, if this was just Ibaka or any other player of his caliber that was on an expiring contract, I'd say they did great, that it was a great trade for them. And it was a good trade for Orlando, but remember that they had just traded for Ibaka during the draft last year, giving up Oladipo and their draft pick in Sabonis. You know, a lot of people were extremely confused when they did that. Oladipo is a good young player. Of course, when Sabonis was drafted, it was too early to tell how good he could be, and it still is to this point. At the same time though, who knows what they'll get with the pick they just acquired in this year's draft. Maybe that player turns out to be a steal. So really, you know, I want to say that this was a good trade for the Magic, because anytime you can get back something like Terrence Ross and a draft pick for an expiring contract like Serge Ibaka, that's an amazing deal. But then if you take a look at, well, it's basically they traded Victor Oladipo and Sabonis for Terrence Ross and this year's draft pick. That's when it's like, well, how good are the draft picks? Because, you know, Victor Oladipo and Terrence Ross is a bit older, but you know, he fits in better with what Orlando has right now. However, at the same time, Orlando is not done making moves yet. You know, they're still trying to trade Elfrid Payton, they're still trying to trade Vucevic. So it's really kind of hard to say what this does for the Orlando Magic at this point, because Terrence Ross is a guy that can come in and give them 20 points per game or close to 20 points per game. And he also allows Aaron Gordon to go back to his natural position, playing power forward instead of playing the small forward. So, you know, before I really judge this trade, I just want to wait and see what else the Orlando Magic front office does. We'll see what other madness they pull off, because, you know, you can never predict what they're going to do. In other news, it just came out. Like, I was preparing to make this video and then I get a notification that the Pistons are apparently exploring the trade market for Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson. You all know how I feel about Reggie and that I do believe that he could and should go far, far, far away. That being said though, Drummond? Really? Now, as much as I like Drummond, there are times that he also frustrates me. Really, me or any other Pistons fan will tell you the same. So before I say this, I want to preface it with this. I really like Drummond, and I think it'll be a huge mistake to get rid of him. That being said, there are times in which he just doesn't seem happy here, or that he just doesn't get along with SVG. There are times where it seems as if he gives up on the team. I mean, if you ever watch the Pistons play a bunch, you can see it in his body language. Times when he seems uninterested, and that is starting to come out to the media, especially as of late with SVG saying things like this. There's a tug of war going on between us, and Drummond responding with things like this. Whatever we talk about with the owner is between us, but Stan and I leave nothing unspoken. Now that could be taken a couple of ways, that there's turmoil going on between Van Gundy or Drummond, or that they have a healthy relationship. I mean, just because they tell each other what they think doesn't necessarily mean that they're fighting or that they don't have respect for each other. It could just mean that they have an open relationship. But then it gets interesting because it's clear that Reggie Jackson is the problem with Detroit this year. Coming off the knee surgery, he isn't nearly the same player he was last year. His decision making as a point guard has always been in question since his arrival in Detroit, but at times it has been overlooked because of his ability to score. This year though, that hasn't been the case, as he has been severely struggling finishing around the rim and with his shot. And the aforementioned lack of playmaking abilities doesn't help his case either. And some of the Pistons players have had problems with Reggie so far this year and his style of play. Even SVG knows what's up, as he said this: Reggie came back and we struggled ever since. But then you look at Drummond and apparently he really likes Reggie, saying things like they're best friends and he'll always have his back. Or that the way that other players came at Reggie during a team meeting wasn't cool and you think they'd be more sensitive. But he also acknowledges that the team has been better with Ish running the point. So you know, it's really a conundrum. It's one of those things where it's either Drummond is in or out, because it seems like at this point he's just trying to hold on to Reggie while everyone else is ready to move on for the better of the team. And whether or not Drummond takes the "if he's out then I'm out" approach to this will ultimately determine his future with the Pistons. Either way though, if these rumors are true, it seems SVG is ready to move on from Reggie, and if that means moving Drummond too, then he is preparing for that as well. That's it for the news though. Things always heat up around this time of year. Now, let's take a look at the games from last night. The Bulls got the win over the Raptors last night to end their losing streak 105-94. Of course, Ibaka didn't play for Toronto because news had just broke about the trade. Jimmy Butler returned for the Bulls though, and of course he led them. I mean, he basically is their team after all. He had 19 points, 12 assists, and 4 steals. Kyle Lowry had 22 for Toronto and DeRozan had 18. And Toronto hasn't beaten Chicago since December 31st, 2013. The Cleveland Cavaliers held out the feisty Wolves last night in the fourth quarter to get the 116-108 win after news broke that Kevin Love will be out for the next 6 weeks because he needs to get his knee scoped. Channing Frye got the start in his place and did an amazing job filling in. He had 21 points and 10 rebounds for Cleveland, and LeBron James and Kyrie Irving had 25 apiece. LeBron James with a near triple-double, as he also grabbed 8 rebounds and dished out 14 assists to go along with his 25 points. Of course, Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins did their parts for Minnesota. Wiggins with an extremely impressive 41 points and Karl Anthony Towns at 26. Ricky Rubio, you can't shoot at all, but you do know how to pass. I will give you that. He had 16 assists. The Sacramento Kings held on to beat the Lakers last night. The Kings started to fall apart a bit towards the end of the game, but luckily for them, NBA games end after the 48th minute. 97-96 is the final score. DeMarcus Cousins with 40 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists for the Kings, including hitting a late jumper and 1 free throw when the game was tied with around 9 seconds to go. He made the first and then missed the second. The Lakers get the rebound, don't call a timeout, rush it up the floor, and Lou Williams breaks the potential game-winning 3 off the backboard. He did have 29 points off the bench though. And that about wraps up all the action for the day 113 recap of the 2016-2017 NBA season. And now it's time to get into the player of the day. Yesterday, you guys selected Nikola Jokic and 17 points, 21 rebounds, and 12 assists as your player of the day. And here are today's nominees. You have Jimmy Butler and his 19 points, 12 assists, and 4 steals. LeBron James and his 25 points, 14 assists, and 8 rebounds. Or DeMarcus Cousins and his 40 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists. You guys can go vote for the player of the day right now. The link to the poll will be in the description box below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like on it if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more daily NBA videos. And until tomorrow, keep getting the buckets, Team SCC, and I'm out of here. Peace!